but I can't really say that, considering the last jumble of episodes I've reviewed. Here is another episode where we mostly follow a character that is not Batman. I'm not saying this as a negative against the episode, but it's been a while since we had a story that almost solely follows Batman as he's investigating a case. Two-Face we almost completely see from Harvey's perspective, though a little less in part 2. Before that we had Be a Clown, where we take on the perspective of the mayor's son, and The Forgotten does follow Bruce, but he's different from how he normally is. The episode before that is POV, where we mostly get the point of view of Montoya. Didn't mean to go on about that, but maybe that is a weakness of watching this series in the production order. Let's just say I can't wait to get to the 14th episode of the box set. Anyway, the focus of this episode is a drug lord named Arnold Stromwell, who is fighting Rupert Thorne for control of the rackets in Gotham, as Commissioner Gordon says. Stromwell's son has gone missing, and Stromwell thinks it's Thorne who has him. Stromwell's life right now is pretty much in shambles because not only has he lost his son, but his marriage has been broken and his drug empire is crumbling under the competition with Thorne. We're back again with trains here because we're given a flashback of the most traumatic experience Stromwell had when he was a boy, where he was almost killed by an incoming train. I really like the coloring of the flashbacks, which really adds a lot of atmosphere to the scenes. They really feel like they took place a long time ago, as if you're watching a film from the early 20th century. Rupert Thorne is planning a trap for Stromwell at a diner while Batman is keeping tabs on them. Soon after Stromwell arrives, he calls Thorne a lowlife and throws him around the diner thinking Thorne has his son. He calms down after Thorne says he has no idea what happened to his son, which is when Thorne bails and the diner blows up. Batman is able to save Stromwell from the explosion while telling Stromwell to give information about the gangs. Stromwell seems like a man who might be willing to change, but he still wants to be the top criminal in Gotham, even though he can see that it's ruining his life. The people around him that are not part of his gang do genuinely want to help him give up the life of a gangster. The sad thing is that he's so absorbed with his power that it's difficult for Stromwell to see beyond that. He started out selling drugs and has become a manufacturer, to which Stromwell tells Batman, "For the record, I make candy." One of the things I give this episode major props for is the fact that it doesn't pull punches in the consequences Stromwell faces for his gangster life. My favorite scene is when Batman takes Stromwell to a drug rehab center. After Batman awesomely intimidates him into stepping inside, he sees his son lying on a bed with his ex-wife beside. Stromwell swears he will find the guy that got his son hooked, but is rocked to the core when his ex-wife tells him that his drugs and his people are the cause of his son being hooked on drugs. It's a very powerful scene, and I'm not sure we'd see that in an action-adventure cartoon nowadays. Batman tells Stromwell to turn himself in and give the information to the DA's office, and Batman gets a great line when he says, "It's time to stop Stromwell. It has to stop Stromwell." When they go to a records room to get the information on the gang, Stromwell shows that he still hasn't changed because he double-crosses Batman, saying he'll take his son home to make sure he gets better. Batman says Stromwell is just fooling himself again, and that's very true. Stromwell is letting his drive for power get the better of him until he can't even see that it's obviously destroying not just his own life, but his son as well. There are two more things considering the scene in particular that bumps this episode up. The first is that Stromwell's characterization is very believable. Because he had power for so long, he's not going to give it up as easily as Batman thinks he will, so it's very realistic when we see Stromwell hasn't changed. Of course, the audience at first thinks that the impact of his son being sick on drugs would push him to give up crime, but when he doesn't, it shows us just how much denial Stromwell really has. The second would be that there is no real personal reason behind Batman trying to help Stromwell. Batman doesn't just beat Stromwell up and take him to the police, but tries to talk reason into him so he can get his life together. This is something else we don't see as often nowadays, where Batman tries to help a criminal. I kind of wish we saw this more often, though after Batman got out of his War Games phase in the comics, he has become more compassionate again. I think a story like this would make for a great one-shot issue, and it would be cool to see it in the newly relaunched Legends of the Dark Knight comic. Anyway, even while Batman is occasionally intimidating Stromwell, he does show his more noble qualities by seeing hope in Stromwell for becoming a better man. While Batman would gain something in return for Stromwell turning himself in, the aforementioned scene in the drug rehab center, Batman shows he genuinely cares. Going back to the scene where Stromwell double-crosses Batman, they are interrupted by Thorne's men, who have found out that Stromwell survived the explosion. How they found out was pretty funny, actually, because they heard a witness talking to Commissioner Gordon about how Batman saved someone from the fire. And the guy says, "I seen it! Like a dark angel snatching the guy from the fires of Hades, man!" So Thorne and his men chase Stromwell down the train yard while Batman is taking them out one by one. After some action, Stromwell runs into a priest who Batman had been talking to earlier in the episode about helping Stromwell. Stromwell gets the flashback again, this time with a little added at the beginning where he is offering his brother candy, but won't take it because he knows Stromwell stole it. The train comes again, and this time we see at the end that his brother Michael pushed him out of the way. Back in the present, we see that the priest is Michael, who makes a final plea to Arnold to give up the life. It turns out that Michael lost one of his legs that day, which is a nice touch that adds more sadness to Stromwell. It's a touching scene where Stromwell hugs his brother, agreeing to turn himself in at last. However, I will admit I chuckled slightly while Stromwell is crying out, "Michael! Michael!" while they were hugging. I guess I'm just insensitive. The evolution of Stromwell getting to this point is very well done, and makes for an optimistic end to an overall somber episode. The animation in this episode looks very good, with the drawing and motion of the characters being as excellent as On Other Wings. Batman himself looks absolutely fantastic, as he's mostly a silhouette here because of his cape, but the coloring is very well done because the black and the blue of the cape has a great contrast that is not as prominent in other episodes of the series. Eugene Roche gave a very sincere performance as Arnold Stromwell. Kevin Conroy is interesting this episode because he doesn't sound quite as good as he normally does. Don't get me wrong, he still sounds like the perfect Batman voice, but his voice sounds weaker here. I saw an interview where Kevin Conroy said that after a month or so of playing the character, it started to affect his voice. He then started to work on some techniques to strengthen the quality of the voice again. I think he recorded this episode when doing the Batman voice was taking a toll on his vocal quality. That being said, this is the only episode where I can recall that I truly noticed that Kevin Conroy's voice was a little too scratchy or weak or not loud enough. Overall, this episode is an excellent character study of one of the top gangsters in Gotham, and we even get insight into Batman's characterization. But will probably not be an episode you'll go back to rewatch much. I give It's Never Too Late a very solid 4 out of 5. The gangster tone of this episode is very well executed, and I can't think of anything wrong with the story, except maybe the flashbacks could have been reworked slightly so we're not basically seeing the same thing twice. I mean, it could be the same flashback, but maybe it could have been shown from us in a different perspective kind of thing. So it feels a little less like a clip thing. Perhaps on that principle, I should rate it higher because I said, there's barely any flaws with it. But replay value is a factor, and I almost never feel compelled to rewatch It's Never Too Late. But this is still a very solid episode. You should definitely watch it if you can. Thanks for watching my review, and I can safely say that I'm not looking forward to the next episode. Life would be much easier if I could magically skip to the episode after, which is all the more tempting considering what the episode after the next one is. But as I said, I was going to review each episode, so next week, stay tuned for my review of the infamous I've Got Batman in My Basement.